Hi, and thanks for watching this message video. Today, we're continuing on in our series through the book of Isaiah, and we're covering chapters 33 and 34, which means we're at the halfway point. And Isaiah is continuing what he's been doing all the way along to this point, which is to give warnings to all kinds of different people groups about a coming judgment. And he's also talked about the Messiah. He's also talked about the last days. And of course, all of these warnings are because of the behaviors and the actions of these people that are contrary to what God's will is. But if you've noticed throughout this series, Isaiah has also talked about the behaviors that God wants to see. For instance, in these chapters, he talks about the final judgment, the coming of the Messiah, but he also talks about what kind of behaviors people need to engage in order to escape judgment. Isaiah 35, 5 through 6, 14 through 17, and 21 and 22. Though the Lord is very great and lives in heaven, he will make Jerusalem his home of justice and righteousness. In that day he will be your sure foundation, providing a rich store of salvation, wisdom, and knowledge. The fear of the Lord will be your treasure. The sinners in Jerusalem shake with fear. Terror seizes the godless. Who can live with this devouring fire? They cry. Who can survive this all-consuming fire? Those who are honest and fair, who refuse to profit by fraud, who stay far away from bribes, who refuse to listen to those who plot murder, who shut their eyes to all enticement to do wrong. These are the ones who will dwell on high. The rocks of the mountains will be their fortress. Food will be supplied to them, and they will have water in abundance. Your eyes will see the King in all his splendor, and you will see a land that stretches into the distance. The Lord will be our mighty one. He will be like a wild river of protection that no enemy can cross, that no enemy ship can sail upon. For the Lord is our judge, our lawgiver, and our King. He will care for us and save us. Who can survive this all-consuming fire? Those who are honest and fair, and those who do not give in to that enticement to do wrong. Now, Isaiah was not stating that you and I are going to earn our salvation, or that those people then needed to earn our salvation or escape through judgment through our efforts or through our good works. He was just simply stating that our behavior as followers is what differentiates us from those who are not followers. And the truth is, our behaviors are always based on our attitude or on the way that we're thinking. And one of the most profound stories in the Bible that highlights this difference in behavior and thinking is the story of Esau and his brother Jacob, whose name was later changed to Israel. For those who don't know that story, Esau, the firstborn son, cared nothing for that role or responsibility and was ready to trade and did trade that right or that blessing to his younger brother Jacob for a single bowl of soup. Now, Jacob, who desperately cared for that role, was even willing to deceive his father in order to have that blessing, and so with the help of his mother, he did so. Which means, from a biblical standpoint, Israel became a representation of those who yearned for God, while Esau, the father of the Edomites, became a representation of those who cared nothing for God. Hopefully that explanation will help this passage to make a little bit more sense, where Isaiah speaks about the last days, but then he goes on to talk about some things that will happen in the present day to the Edomites. Isaiah 34, 1 through 17. Come here and listen, O nations of the earth. Let the world and everything in it hear my words. For the Lord is enraged against the nations. His fury is against all their armies. He will completely destroy them, dooming them to slaughter. Their dead will be left unburied, and the stench of rotting bodies will fill the land. The mountains will flow with their blood. The heavens above will melt away and disappear like a rolled-up scroll. The stars will fall from the sky like withered leaves from a grapevine or shriveled figs from a fig tree. And when my sword has finished its work in the heavens, it will fall upon Edom, the nation I have marked for destruction. The sword of the Lord is drenched with blood and covered with fat, with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of rams prepared for sacrifice. Yes, the Lord will offer a sacrifice in the city of Basra. He will make a mighty slaughter in Edom. Even men as strong as wild oxen will die, the young men alongside the veterans. The land will be soaked with blood, and the soil enriched with fat. For it is the day of the Lord's revenge, the year when Edom will be paid back for all it did to Israel. The streams of Edom will be filled with burning pitch, and the ground will be covered with fire. This judgment on Edom will never end. The smoke of its burning will rise forever. The land will lie deserted from generation to generation. No one will live there anymore. It will be haunted by the desert owl and the screech owl, the great owl and the raven, for God will measure that land carefully. He will measure it for chaos and destruction. It will be called the land of nothing, and all its nobles will soon be gone. Thorns will overrun its palaces. Nettles and thistles will grow in its forts. The ruins will become a haunt for jackals and a home for owls. Desert animals will mingle there with hyenas, their howls filling the night. Wild goats will bleat at one another among the ruins, and night creatures will come there to rest. There the owl will make her nest and lay her eggs. She will hatch her young and cover them with her wings, and the buzzards will come, each one with its mate. Search the book of the Lord and see what he will do. Now one of these birds and animals will be missing, and none will lack a mate, for the Lord has promised this. His spirit will make it all come true. He has surveyed and divided the land and deeded it over to those creatures. They will possess it forever, from generation to generation. Again, in this passage, you can see that Isaiah is giving warnings. Every nation. He starts off by saying, literally, every nation. This is a warning given to you from God, and here's why. And all of it really has to do with a group of people continually choosing to live for themselves rather than giving their lives over to God and living for Him. But you also notice in here that he speaks about the stars in the heavens. And this is a reference to the judgment that God is going to be making against Satan and those angels that followed him, which is almost essentially identical to the same prophecy that John, the apostle, gave in the book of Revelation about in the last days. How, again, those who are living for themselves instead of surrendering their lives over to God are going to experience this judgment, but not just them, those in the heavens as well. Here's what John says. Revelation 6:12 through 17. I watched as the Lamb broke the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake. The sun became as dark as black cloth, and the moon became as red as blood. Then the stars of the sky fell to the earth like green figs falling from a tree shaken by a strong wind. The sky was rolled up like a scroll, and all of the mountains and islands were moved from their places. Then everyone, the kings of the earth, the rulers, the generals, the wealthy, the powerful, and every slave and free person, all hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they cried to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of the one who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath is come, and who is able to survive? These things that Isaiah and John spoke about, these prophecies, some of them are happening right now. Some of them have already happened, and some of them will happen. We know this to be true. And to help us understand that these things will come true, a part of that prophecy that Isaiah gave was given against the Edomites, a judgment against them, this group of people who represent those who have no care or concern whatsoever for God. And what was different maybe about the Edomites than maybe all of these other nations that I've spoken about, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Philistines, is that the Edomites had every opportunity to know their God, had every opportunity to embrace their God, like Esau. You see, maybe you know enough about those who are considered Hebrews or Jews or Israelites that they have a deep reverence and respect for their ancestors or the patriarchs, and that they will oftentimes say, we serve the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. But that easily could have been and Esau. But he didn't choose that. The Edomites didn't choose that. And so ultimately, what God had asked Isaiah to do was to be his representative, his ambassador, his individual who would go to these people and give warnings. And yes, it was warnings over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. But like in the New Testament, the writer of Hebrews said that you and I should give warnings to everybody, brothers and sisters, those who are in this world, everybody, and to do so every day while it is still called today. Why? Because there is a judgment that is coming. There is an end times that will end, and we are in them. And as a result, like what John prophesied, our responsibility, like his or like Isaiah's, is to give warnings. And of course, these guys weren't the only ones who gave warnings. Perhaps one of the most significant warnings ever given was by the Apostle Paul and what he wrote to those who should have known better about the things going on during the last days and in the end times, and particularly with God. And they certainly knew what it meant to have a desire for God, like what Jacob had, rather than none, like what Esau had. Here's what Paul said. Romans 1. But God shows his anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or even give him thanks. And they began to think of foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused, so God abandoned them to do whatever shameful things their hearts desired. As a result, they did vile and degrading things with each other's bodies. Their lives became full of every kind of wickedness, sin, greed, hate, envy, murder, quarreling, deception, malicious behavior, and gossip. They are backstabbers, haters of God, insolent, proud, and boastful. They invent new ways of sinning, and they disobey their parents. They refuse to understand, break their promises, are heartless, and have no mercy. They know God's justice requires that those who do these things deserve to die, yet they do them anyway. Worse yet, they encourage others to do them too. You may think you can condemn such people, but you are just as bad, and you have no excuse. When you say they are wicked and should be punished, you are condemning yourself. For you, who judge others, do these very same things. And we know that God, in His justice, will punish anyone who does such things. Since you judge others for doing these things, why do you think you can avoid God's judgment when you do the same things? Don't you see how wonderfully kind, tolerant, and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that His kindness is intended to turn you from your sin? But because you are stubborn and refuse to turn from your sin, you are storing up a terrible punishment for yourself. For a day of anger is coming, when God's righteous judgment will be revealed. He will judge everyone according to what they have done. He will give eternal life to those who keep on doing good, seeking after the glory and honor and immortality that God offers. But He will pour out His anger and wrath on those who live for themselves, who refuse to obey the truth and instead live lives of wickedness.